All right, today we're diving into one of the most bizarre, most astonishing survival stories in the entire history of science. Seriously, this is a story that sounds like it was ripped straight out of a comic book origin story, but I promise you it is absolutely true.
So, let me just ask you a question right out of the gate. Could you survive being shot in the head with a particle beam? Logically, the answer has to be a hard no. We're talking about a concentrated beam of protons, moving at nearly the speed of light. That's not something you just walk away from.
And yet, against all odds, the answer is somehow yes. Because back in 1978, it actually happened. One man took a direct hit from a particle accelerator straight through his skull. And you know what? He lived to tell the tale. So, how in the world is that even possible? What happens to a person when they literally intersect with one of the most powerful forces that humanity has ever created? Okay, let's get into his unbelievable story.
Our story starts at the very height of the Cold War. We're in the Soviet Union. The year is 1978. And you have to understand, this wasn't just any time or place. This was an era of super intense scientific competition, where pushing the boundaries of physics, well, that was a matter of national pride and power. And right at the heart of all this was a man named Anatoly Bugorski. He was a brilliant, dedicated young physicist, and he was working right on the bleeding edge of his field. For him, this was it. He was exactly where he wanted to be, doing the research that mattered. Bugorski's whole world was the Institute for High-Energy Physics, a top-secret Soviet facility. And the crown jewel of this place was the U-70 synchrotron, a massive particle accelerator. I want you to just picture a machine that's designed to create and fire beams of protons with a force that's, well, it's almost unimaginable. This was the powerful, and as it turns out, profoundly dangerous world he was in every single day. So on July 13th, 1978, Anatoly Bugorski was about to become a piece of scientific history, totally against his will. What started out as just another day, a routine check on a piece of equipment, was about to end in a catastrophic, once-in-a-lifetime accident. The sequence of events here is it's mind-boggling. So Bugorski's just doing his job, right? Inspecting a part that's acting up. But, and this is crucial, multiple safety mechanisms had failed without anyone realizing it. So, as he leaned into the accelerator's chamber, the proton beam fired. It went into the back of his head and exited right through his nose. Incredibly, he felt no pain. He just saw a flash, what he described as brighter than 1,000 suns. And then, get this, he made the absolutely stunning decision to not tell anyone. He just finished his work for the day and went home. Well, that silence didn't last. The massive dose of radiation he'd absorbed started taking its toll almost right away. That very night, the left side of his face swelled up so much that he was completely unrecognizable. And from there, the damage just escalated fast. Over the next few days, the skin on his face and on the back of his head actually started peeling away, revealing the direct path the proton beam had burned right through his skull, his brain, and his face. When he was finally rushed to a clinic in Moscow, the outlook was beyond grim. He had absorbed a dose of radiation hundreds of times greater than what's considered lethal. The doctors, they were positive he would die within days, maybe weeks at most. They weren't there to treat him, really. They were there to observe what they thought was his inevitable death.
But Anatoly Bugorski didn't die. And that brings us to the central, baffling question of this whole story. How is any of this even possible? How could a human being survive something that, by all accounts, should have been instantly fatal?
The answer, it turns out, isn't really in medicine. It's in physics. The very nature of the force that hit him is also, ironically, the key to his impossible survival. So to get this, we really have to understand what makes a proton beam so unique. And this comparison right here really gets to the heart of it. Think about other kinds of radiation, or even a physical injury. They cause huge, widespread damage to a big area of tissue. But the proton beam from that U-70 accelerator was incredibly narrow. We're talking just a few millimeters wide. It was intensely, precisely focused. So yeah, the beam burned a tiny, devastating path straight through his head, but it was so precise that it spared just enough of the critical areas of his brain around that path. It was almost like being stabbed by the universe's smallest, sharpest, and fastest needle. The damage was horrific, for sure, but it was contained to that narrow channel. It's a principle that, ironically, we now use to save lives with proton beam cancer therapy. So Bugorski survived the unsurvivable. But that survival came at an incredibly high price. And because all of this happened in the super secretive world of the Soviet Union, his extraordinary story was buried for more than a decade. And his life, it was changed forever.
He was left with deep, permanent scars, for one. The nerve damage caused the left side of his face to be completely paralyzed. And eerily, that paralyzed side never aged like the right side did. He lost all hearing in his left ear, and for the rest of his life, he suffered from recurring, debilitating seizures. You see, this whole incident was a huge embarrassment for the Soviet state. It showed some serious flaws in their prized scientific program. So they did what they often did in those situations. They just buried the story. Bugorski's case became a state secret.
He was strictly forbidden from talking about what happened to him with anyone, especially not with scientists from the West. He basically became a ghost in his own life, this walking miracle that nobody was allowed to talk about.
Just think about that for a second. In pretty much any other part of the world, he would have been a medical marvel, maybe even a celebrity. But for Anatoly Bugorski, there was just nothing. No headlines celebrating his impossible survival, no glory for enduring what no other human ever had. And what might be the most remarkable part of this whole story is that through all of it, the constant pain, the seizures, the forced silence, he went back to work. He quietly continued his career as a physicist at the very same institute. It's just a testament to his incredible, unbelievable resilience. So why does this bizarre story from deep in the Cold War still matter today? Well, because Bugorski's experience isn't just some strange historical footnote. It's actually a powerful and very human warning that still resonates.
His survival is this stark, unforgettable reminder of the extreme dangers of radiation. It highlights, in the most dramatic way you can imagine, why safety procedures around these powerful technologies aren't just suggestions, they are absolutely critical. And finally, his story reveals the hidden human costs that can sometimes come along with our greatest scientific achievements.
In the end, his life wasn't defined by fame or recognition. It was defined by the quiet endurance of his fate. His entire legacy, really, can be summed up by this simple, powerful summary of his life after the accident. Just scars, silence, and the quiet pursuit of science. A truly impossible survivor.